Electromagnetic Radar just finding the Dedenne there. I wonder how many targets that Electromagnetic Radar really has.
I think it's just that. But that's all he needs.
Well, right. I mean, we're seeing just how powerful the effect is, right?
Yeah.
We're now drawing 6 cards here for Dead Change. And the name of the game, though, is still having 150 damage on your Mewtwo and Mew tag team that's active with no energy on it, so no way to really get it out of there. Like you said, there usually is a way for you to remove this damage, and it implies, I believe it's Greninja that has the attack.
Right.
That not only deals damage but also shuffles your damaged Mewtwo and Mew back into your deck. But when you don't have energy on your Pokemon, you can't do that.
Yep, that would be the Greninja DX with Haze Slash, and I don't believe he plays it in his list.
Yeah, I don't see it, so I don't believe so either. So he's got to have something else, right? Something up his sleeve. We'll have to wait and see. Or maybe he's just prepared to give it up. Maybe he's okay with maybe having reset stamp or something along those lines.
We'll have to see where he chooses to place these energies. If he commits to the active, maybe he can save it from a knockout by way of using Latios's Tag Purge one more time. It seems like he is just committed to leaving that damage on there. He's going to bring up this former Mewtwo and Mew that he had up previously with that Switch card.
Well, that was one way of getting it out of harm's way, just by playing Switch, but...
Oh, cool.
Okay.
He used Magcargo GX's attack. He went and copied Lava Flow and was able to do 50 plus 50 for every basic energy that you discard in that way. So he threw away 4, it's 250 damage, and he takes the knockout.
So he is now down to 2 prizes. That's a big knockout, but look at everything it cost him. It did not come cheaply, as now Henry is down to just 2 fire energies on his benched Mewtwo GX. And yes, it has no damage on it, but remember, he's already used the Switch to get 1 Mewtwo GX out of harm's way. He's got to be running out of resources to be able to keep attacking, right? Like, you've already used your big Magcargo GX Lava Flow. What else do you have up your sleeve of your Henry to take the final 2 prizes?
Yeah, and this is where Charlie's strategy tries to come into place. He has all of that hand disruption, so he uses Judge, hoping eventually that he lands you on a hand that just can't go anywhere. And we're going to see, I believe that's a Hoopa promoted, attacking. It's going to do extra damage for every Pokemon with abilities on your opponent's side of the board. So looks like
it's doing 110?
110, yep.
Yep, 110. There we go.
A lot of abilities.
5 different
there.
Pokemon with abilities, plus 10. That's 110. I triple checked my math, Kyle.
Well done.
All right, so now Charlie did deal 110 damage to this Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX, leaving it heavily damaged, but still a couple of hits away from being knocked out. Now Henry, like we mentioned, does have 2 energy on Mewtwo and Mew, but the problem is that it's benched. And he still needs to take himself a couple of prizes. No Guzma in this game anymore, so you're going to have to find a different strategy here.
He's actually got a pretty great hand off of that Judge. He found himself, I believe that's double Custom Catcher. I don't know if he has any
found himself
energies.
A Welder and a couple of fires, and that was huge already.
Yeah, double Custom Catcher plus a Dedenne in his hand as well, so maybe he could close out this game here if he finds the right attack. Looks like he's going to go after that Zeraora GX.
There's that Custom Catcher being played. It does promote the Zeraora. Now there's a switch.
So this Pokemon has free retreat, so he's just buying himself some options. This Dedenne is going to get played. I think he needs to just find an energy to use Lava Flow for game here. He found it.
Yep, there's that energy. Lava Flow is now going to be able to take out this Zeraora GX. That's going to be the final 2 prizes taken for Henry Brand. And that's going to be a very quick game 1 going to Henry, as you're absolutely right. That double Custom Catcher as well as that Welder with 2 fire energies, all of those things came into play in order for him to be able to start to lock this game out for Charlie. Really, Charlie put a lot of disruption against Henry, but Henry got everything he needed, and that happened a couple of times in this game. And that's exactly what happened there. And unfortunately for Charlie, he's now down 1-0 in this match.
Yeah, Charlie has a very interesting strategy in using those Judge cards to disrupt his opponent. Unfortunately, you get 4 cards and then you draw for the turn. 5 cards is a pretty good amount of cards. It's not like using an N in the late game that we've seen throughout previous tournaments and previous years. Using a reset stamp is much more impactful, and Charlie only plays 1 of those from what I've seen from his list. So if he doesn't find that at the most opportune time when his opponent has taken all these prize cards, it's very likely that Henry will find the right cards, able to connect them all together with that welder, double custom catcher, and making use of that Magcargo that we have not seen in this deck before. I'm sure that others have tested with it, but honestly, we haven't seen it on our stage, and it's been very impressive with 2 huge knockouts.
Yeah, it seemed like Charlie, instead of going for like a reset stamp type of setup, he went for Judge as his disruption card of choice, and that just, we saw how that can backfire, right? 4 cards is sometimes plenty. 4 cards is sometimes plenty, and in this particular case, we saw how when you have things like Welder and, you know, in this case as well, multiple fire energies, then you're just drawing so many cards and you're giving your opponent so many resources that they can sometimes pull off these big turns that they need.
Well, we are about to jump into our second game here. We got a little peek over at Charlie's prize cards. Double custom catcher is prized. 1 Latios and a Magcargo. We saw how big that was in the matchup.
Yeah, that Magcargo was very key for, I mean, of course, it was 5 of the prizes. Very key.
That's usually pretty good.
in Henry's strategy there.
Well, Charlie is going to start us off here with that electromagnetic radar. That's one of his best cards in the opener. Able to find himself typically some of his biggest attackers and support Pokemon. If he needed to find any extra cards, he could always find Dedenne. Looks like he's going to be pretty happy with a Pikachu and Zekrom and a Zeraora, and just falling straight into that Judge.
Well, there's that turn 1 Judge again. Like we mentioned, that is Charlie's supporter of choice when it came to disruption. You know, for better or for worse, that card has been the supporter that he's been playing.
Yep, it's so much more impactful on the opening turn. If your opponent only plays 1 Pokemon, instead of essentially being able to see 7 and that 8th card with the top deck, they only see 4 with that 1 active and then the 5th of the top deck. It's being able to only operate with so few cards in the opening turns when you need to have a lot of action. That's when you start to see that this isn't going to work out.
Wow,
too well for
Dedenne off of that Judge, by the way. So now he's got 6 more cards available to him.
Yeah, he has also not used his Jirachi as well.
Exactly. So here's the thing, too, is like you can see where the wheels were spinning when Charlie was building this deck. He has not only the aggression and the consistency of Jirachi, but he pairs that with the disruption of Judge. If you can pull that off and you can then put your opponent into a slower or just potentially dead hand, then, you know, you can steal a lot of games that way. And, of course, Charlie will not be suffering from that as often as Henry will because of Jirachi and because he plays so many Dedennes. Now, Henry here plays a Welder right away at the start of his turn and finds double fire and a Psychic. So it's 3 energy right away on this side of the field here for Henry. And he has a Dedenne.
Wow, that's absolutely huge. He found such amazing cards for himself here. Also gets to put that Solgaleo GX into his discard pile, so he has options to accelerate energies from his discard pile if he so chooses. We'll see if that potentially comes into play. Using that mysterious treasure, could potentially find himself a second Mewtwo and Mew. Seems like that is going to be the option for him here. He has a second Dedenne in hand, can't use that just yet, but on this following turn, he could really start to roll through his deck and get himself in an amazing spot.
Yeah, as long as he can get himself some energies in his discard pile, then he's just going to have the perfect turn, right?
Yeah, this is exactly where you want to be. Acrobike, it looks like it hasn't been too helpful for him. Just going to have to throw away one of those Mewtwo and Mews.
Yeah, kind of an irrelevant card to throw away, but just didn't find him what he wanted. I'm sure that he would have loved to have.
Not sure if that card in his hand is a Cherish Ball. If he does want, he could find himself a Latios and just start to lock in that tag purge early.
Could also maybe find himself another Dedenne if he has another, which I'm sure he does.
Yeah, he has one in hand, but he's already used Dedenne change for the turn, so he has to hold on.
Yeah, I got you. And there goes Jirachi as, once again, Henry just, what a powerful first turn, by the way.
Yeah. I'm assuming that he's using the Solgaleo's attack there. It really doesn't matter as long as this Pokemon gets knocked out and he doesn't flip his GX marker.
Sure. But yeah, it looks like, I mean, Turbo Strike is just a fine way to knock out that Jirachi. Now, Charlie here down a prize already and down a game. Finds himself at Thunder Mountain with that stadium nav.
Yeah,
Will
this
he
is
be able
the
to
ideal stadium for him to find, even without energy acceleration from a Tapu Koko Prism. He does have the energies that he needs to perform a fantastic attack for himself here.
Seems like both of these players are really just coming out of the gates completely, well, let's just say, I'm just going to use the word fast. But yeah, these players are just coming out of the gate.
Coming out of the gate completely fast. Yeah, honestly, I think Henry's MVP card is Charlie's Judge. That thing has been great for him.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Henry's going to call that his most valuable card, despite not being in his deck. All right. Charlie wants to keep the momentum going. He is actually, despite Henry taking the first prize, he is actually starting to set up pretty well. A skateboard onto Dene. Now there's Dede change for the turn.
And he lost that custom catcher. We know he has 2 in his prize cards, so he will not have a way to move this Pokemon from the active spot until he draws what looked like it were going to be his 5th and 6th prize cards if he draws from that ascending order.
Charlie does full blitz, though. Get some energy into play, so now Charlie's starting to set up his field and start to put damage on these Pokemon. Remember that Mewtwo and Mew has all the energy on it. If that Mewtwo and Mew gets knocked out, there goes all the energy that Henry Brand's been able to produce. Cherish Ball play, the first one for Henry's second turn here.
Yep.
An explosive first turn. Will he be able to follow that up with even more explosion?
Henry has an interesting choice ahead of him. He wants to grab Latios so that he can start using Tag Purge, but at the same time, the more Pokemon that he benches with abilities, the more likely it is for a Hoopa to come up and start to disrupt that Tag Purge attack. So he kind of has to be careful with how committed he is to this bench.
He can also choose to start discarding these Tag Purge style Pokemon, right?
Potentially. It looks like he's opting for the Naganadel.
Yeah, Naganadel.
So he has the Latios in hand already and has the Dene as well. So the Naganadel can go to the discard pile. He would have options for sniping for a 170. That could remove the Hoopa or remove a Dedenne. If he wants to lock in the Tag Purge, then, of course, knocking out that Hoopa pretty much seals that he's not going to have to worry about any of those Pokemon for a while.
Attaches an energy to the active Mewtwo and Mew.
Loses one custom catcher.
Discards his entire hand to draw 6 new ones.
Found another custom catcher.
Don't you just love it when they're all 15 cards apart from each other?
Don't you remember when this used to just be one effect named Guzma and you didn't have to do all this wacky stuff to bring a Pokemon to the active?
The good old days. All right, Acrobike discarding an energy. That is always good when you have Turbo Strike available to you. Now, this is where he wishes that Macargo was not prized, right? Like,
yeah.
At this point, I'm sure that's the first thing he looked for when he was Cherish Balling, realized it wasn't there, and then had to find a plan B pretty quickly. But it's just, I mean, that's what the Macargo's there in this deck for.
So we're going to see Bill's analysis. Maybe he's looking for the other piece of that custom catcher. Sees it on the 7th card. I'm not sure if he really wants to, though.
Right,
this is not the ideal place for it. I mean, of course, having that in hand seems good, but...
Yeah, I think he was going to pick it no matter what.
Yeah.
The question becomes, is he going to play it? Like, if you play it, what do you target? Do you target the... You target the Raichus?
I don't know. I might just be a spectator for a minute and see how this works out.
Yeah, I mean, because your opponent's just going to be able to full blitz knockout and just bring more energy into play.
Yeah, Henry has just attached all these energies to his active and doesn't really have a backup plan.
That's exactly right, Kyle. And that's kind of what's left me scratching my head a bit.
So he's going to go ahead and take that snipe on the Dedenne using the
Gonadell's attack.
Gonadell.
Yeah. So he knocks out the Dedenne. So he's choosing to go with prizes rather than damage on the field.
This is scary because this is kind of where Charlie would like to be. Charlie's going to get to take a nice knockout on a tag team Pokemon, remove all of the energies from play. If he can combine that with a Judge on this turn or maybe a Reset Stamp, his opponent just has a bunch of random GX Pokemon and no energies.
There's the Judge that you were just talking about. And yeah, even though the prizes are telling one story, the board's telling another. The prizes tell you that Henry's just one knockout away from winning the match. And then you start looking at, you start wondering how he's going to be able to pull that off. We're going to be able to see a full blitz, see more energy come into play for Charlie, and now all of the energy is going to be gone from Henry, right?
Yeah.
So
and
Henry's going to have a 4-card hand. He's already used a couple of Dedennes, and he's got no energy in play.
And Charlie's just going to be a lightning ride plus Electropower away from taking any knockout on the field.
That too. It could be a short game here.
Charlie's hand is pretty great. I don't think he needs to play anything. I think he just wants to hold on to these, give himself a few prize cards from this knockout here, and just one more energy onto the Raichu buddies would be pretty great for him here.
Charlie, I mean, yeah. I think we're both kind of spectators in this particular situation, as it seems like Charlie may have just turned things around. There's that full blitz. Knockout on that Mewtwo and Mew. 3 prizes taken here for Charlie. And now I believe all the lightning energies are just gone out of the deck. That's actually one thing that's a little dangerous, right? He was only able to full blitz for 1 energy, and there's no more energy left in his deck. So what you see is what you get for the remainder of the game.
Fortunately for him, does have 2 energies in his hand, a lot of energy switch cards, so finding a different attacker isn't too hard for him.
Oh, absolutely not.
We'll see if this Cherish Ball has another Dedenne maybe for him.
He might still have one available.
I think it has to be Dedenne into Welders, into a lot of great stuff.
Looks like he's eyeing... I don't think he's eyeing Dedenne.
Yeah, he's looking at Reshiram and Charizard. There is a Dedenne in there. Maybe his hand is just good enough. We'll have to see what he chooses.
It's got to have Welder and Double Fire, and even then?
Yeah, that'd be ideal. So you're going to take that Reshiram and Charizard.
Okay, so that is the Pokemon he chose with that Cherish Ball.
I think I see a Switch and a Giant Hearth as well, another Cherish Ball, so this could be for the Dedenne.
Right, so that's one reason not to go for it is...
Because you can just do it again.
Just want to extend...
Just make your opponent sweat.
There it is. That's the Dedenne being found here with that Cherish Ball.
And Charlie goes, oh, man.
I mean, it worked, right?
Yeah.
It even got the commentators with full vision to be able to get tricked there.
Well played.
Yeah, no kidding, Henry. All right, so Dedenne in hand, Psychic Energy, the energy attachment for the turn here for Henry.
Yeah, gets to counter that stadium, which is very helpful, removing that Thunder Mountain.
Sure, Giant Hearth is going to be the stadium now that's going to replace it. And there's Dedenne change. Will he find this, ideally a Welder here?
He's moving pretty quick. He's going to grab those energies with the Giant Hearth.
Yep, Giant Hearth discards Mysterious Treasure to find himself 2 fire energies from his deck. Gets those fires. He does have them in there. All right, does Henry have the Welder? I haven't been able to take a look at his hand quite yet. You have to believe that he's at, yeah. He was moving so quickly that you almost had to believe he already had it. And sure enough, there it was, Welder. All right, promotes that Mewtwo and Mew. Has 3 energy on it now. Does he have a knockout or anything close to it?
I think he's got Tag Purge for days.
Tag Purge is the attack of choice, so there's 120 damage dealt onto Charlie's Reshiram and, I'm sorry, Pikachu and Zekrom. There we go. Now, Charlie, though, does he have maybe a double custom catcher or something along those lines?
I'm going to guess no, because they should still be in the prize cards. If we could get a peek at those prize cards, that'd be very helpful for over on Charlie's side, just to see which ones he decided to select.
Remember,
He has both of those in the prize cards, and I believe we already saw one hit the discard pile. So there is no switching effect available to him. The only option he has for other attacks is either by way of that Hoopa or to start moving some of his energies to a Zeraora. There's wildness with Dedenne, but I don't think we're going to see that. But these tag team Pokemon aren't going to be helping him too much here.
Yeah, he had to discard that first one early, right? And then from that point on, we knew that he had a couple left in his prizes, but is that really one of the things that you check for in your prizes on the first turn? I mean, in certain cases it is, obviously, but...
Yeah, in a matchup like this, I definitely would. I would think that that's one of the most important things, right along with my Tapu Koko Prism, which you always look for.
Right.
Just because you know that there's going to be a turn where you're going to need to get a nice attack into something that isn't a Tech Purge Mewtwo attack.
You have to believe that even if he hadn't at that point, he definitely has now started to figure out that there are no custom catchers left in his deck, or there's only one left in his deck, I should say. Judge now played for Charlie. Both players shuffling their hands and drawing 4.
Theoretically, these judges should just be getting more powerful as the game goes, seeing that there are 3 Dedenne in play. It means that drawing into the right card should just get harder and harder. Every Pokemon resource that he had through Cherish Balls or Electromagnetic Radars are not going to start finding him 6 cards every time. They're instead just going to be pretty dead draws.
Looks like it's time to start paralyzing this Mewtwo and Mew. There we come.
Yep, so we've seen that other decks have that Cobalion as a way to avoid this effect being too impactful. We've seen switches in Henry's deck. We'll see if he's able to find one. I know he had to discard one off of that last Dedenne. He may have another one available in his deck. I think he plays that golden one, and I think I just saw a little reflection of it there in his deck, so maybe he is able to find one of those.
Giant Hearth finding 2 more energy here for Henry, but yeah, I don't believe there's a Cobalion, right, in this deck.
Yeah, you usually have to play it along with the Rainbow Energy so that you can get that effect from the metal,
right.
And he seems to be playing this basic energy route with the Mag Cargo.
Sure. So now what's going to happen here, Kyle?
Well, look, he does have Cobalion. Does he? I don't understand.
Okay. That's 2 of us. So you're right, he does have Cobalion in his deck, but does he have what he needs to get out of this paralysis and start that Tag Purge all over again?
And we'll just have to see.
Such a complicated deck, Kyle.
Bills is a great way for him to find this switch card if it's available to him. Charlie with one last shuffle, trying to make sure that this thing does not show up. Wow.
There it is. It is exactly what he was looking for. He found it with that Bills. He found a way to switch out of there, and now Charlie Lockyer does go down 2-0 against Henry Brand as Henry Brand advances to a 3-0 record at this second day of the World Championships. That means that he is one step closer to making that top 8 and potentially being able to hoist that championship up high at the end of Sunday.
Absolutely. What an amazing game played by both of those players. A very interesting style played by Charlie. And Henry just showed that you can take a deck that is I mean, we saw it on Friday, and it looked like we had a pretty set strategy of that deck, using Rainbow Energies and using all those different attackers. Instead, he just goes, I'm going to play a bunch of different basic Pokemon, a lot of different stadiums so that I don't have to worry about Power Plant, and then use an effect as powerful as Macargo's attack and just wipe out huge tag team Pokemon one after the next.
That's the crazy thing and the really interesting thing about this this Mewtwo Perfection deck is it just... I don't know how many different ways there are to build a deck.
We're chasing perfection.
Yeah.
And we're getting closer. And it seems like Henry's one step closer to that echelon that everyone's trying to get to.
Right, but there's so many different ways to build this deck that it's really hard to prepare for it. It really is. Like, we saw how Macargo was. This is the first time we've seen Macargo this weekend. And we've seen this deck throughout the week already. We've seen it multiple times. First time we've seen Macargo. Now, you know, we didn't even expect for there to be a Cobalion, but there was in the deck. And there's just so many things that you have to worry about when you're playing against a Perfection deck.
Right. Now, I'm curious to actually see Robin's list. We had Robin on stream earlier, and I saw some of the basic psychic energies out of his list, but I didn't get to watch the entire match.
Right.
Curious to see if maybe he stumbled upon that Macargo as well. Can't be too sure just yet, but curious to see how he does in this throughout the rest of the tournament, along with Henry. Henry's going to be one of those players that's looking to add that title to his name. He's got some accomplishments, and of course, Australia has been struggling to have a player reach that top stage, win an international championship, and continue on to the World Championship, and finally take a title home for themselves. So if Henry's able to do that for his country, for himself, for his continent, that'd be pretty impressive.
Yeah, we saw how well they did in day one last year, right? And then unfortunately for them, that's kind of where that story ended.
Yeah,
but this time around,
the Buzzwole deck was going wild.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That Buzzwole deck did, of course, just successfully bring so many of those players into that day two. And now here we are with Henry now at 3-0. It's just that's the World Championships for you. That's the story of the World Championships. There's so many decks and so many different ways to build this deck in particular. I can't wait to see more of it, and I can't wait to see how it continues to perform throughout the day.
Yeah, I'm also curious to follow along with how Charlie does throughout the rest of the tournament as well, to see if this judge strategy has been able to lock out some opponents in the previous matches, and to see if he can continue to do that in the following matches. Maybe he just has some of the fastest games that are being played and he gets a lot of downtime. If he can lock out opponents around 4 and 5, conserve some of that energy, that mental strain, and then just roll through the end of the day, he could have one of the easiest rides here into the top 8.
Yeah, he is still 2-1, right? Like 2-1 is an enviable record to have for a lot of these players.
Yeah,
and it's just, of course, very few losses, or one loss to give probably at this point, if that. But still, definitely still in contention for that top 8. And it's just, I like how you mentioned that. I like how you said that. This is a different route of victory for a very popular deck. Now, we've seen Pikachu and Zekrom, just like we've seen the Mewtwo Perfection deck before throughout the weekend. But these are just different ways of playing that same deck that we've seen, and we're seeing how they can also lead to success. Mm-hmm. And I think that's once again a benefit of having this new format.
Yeah, everybody gets to put their own twist on it, and the fact that the Unified Mindset dropped the day that World started. This means that this is the first tournament that we are going to get to see all of these cards played together. And now that we see that everybody had different takes on it, and of course they have all their different testing partners, they eventually get to this spot where they think this is the best deck, and you don't want to share that with everyone else that isn't working as hard as you are.
Yeah.
So everyone's going to reach their own final destination. We see that it's proven to be pretty great for Henry.
Correct. And now let's take a look at an interview with Henry and see exactly what he has to say about his deck.
Thanks so much, guys. I am here with Henry. Congratulations on that win.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
Really good, actually, yeah.
Yeah? Well, tell us a little bit about this deck. It maybe is a little bit new, a little bit fresh to some people. Tell us about the choices you made in building it.
Okay, well, as we know, Zoroark GX is rotated, and I played that deck at every tournament because you have so many options every single turn. But with that gone, the closest thing for me was Mewtwo Mew GX. So with the ability Perfection, you can copy any attack on the board or in the discard pile, and so instead of having every option in your hand, you have it in the attacks. And so people weren't exactly sure how to build it. A lot of lists weren't very consistent, but we think we've got something pretty good.
Yeah, well, I know you probably don't want to reveal everything about it, but what is one of the things you would maybe point out to someone who is at home thinking, ooh, I want to build a deck like that? Where should they start?
I think keep it simple, so don't overdo the options. Focus on consistency and speed. That's one of the big benefits. And a lot of other lists, they might be a bit slower, maybe more complex. So when they draw well, they might have more options, but that doesn't happen as often. So we've gone for speed, consistency. That's the key.
Awesome. And it's worked pretty well for you. You're here doing very well at Worlds. How are you feeling about your record so far and your expectations for the tournament?
I couldn't be happier than my record. We were a bit worried about the deck after day one. There were a few things that popped up from the Japanese players like Keldeo and Gardevoir, but we haven't seen too much of that today, and everything else I feel pretty comfortable with, so looking good.
Awesome. And you're here representing Australia?
Yeah.
How does that feel?
It feels great, honestly.
Yeah.
We've never had an Australian player make top 8 at the World Championships, so I'm hoping to be the first. Yeah.
Great. Well, we wish you the best of luck toward that. Thank you so much, Henry.
Thank you.
And casters, we'll head back over to you.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Henry, for that awesome interview. Great to see, not only a great player, but a great personality do so well at this World Championship.
Yeah, and he understands that there is a bit of stress that he could place on himself by being the first Australian to reach the top 8 in the World Championships, and I'm sure that would be a huge accomplishment for him, and that's something that he'd like to accomplish, but at the same time, he's just taking this a game at a time. He knows that consistency is key, and he's just going to keep on doing what he does best, and that's making sure that his deck runs at the speed that it needs to, and start taking these wins one game at a time.
Yeah, I know that this deck really caught my eye, especially once I saw the Macargo. I thought the Macargo was just an incredible addition to the deck.
Yeah.
And I know that it caught a lot of other people's eyes. It's one of the many awesome things that we get to witness at the World Championship is just new innovation, new tech. And we've been seeing that throughout the day already, of course, on the main stage and starting with this round today and here in the TCG stream. All of you guys watching at home, if you guys love what you see, please use that hashtag #PlayPokemon. I can't stress that enough. That is how you can gather around with other people that love the game as much as you do, and we can all have a good conversation about what we're seeing here at the World Championship.
Yeah, letting lava flow all over Pikachu and Zekrom tag teams is something that everybody can enjoy. So make sure to use that hashtag #PlayPokemon. If maybe you are an Australian who's looking to follow along with the rest of how Henry's doing, you can obviously check in on how he does and how everyone else is doing throughout the rest of the stream using that hashtag #PlayPokemon.
But that was the end of round 3, Kyle. There is still a few rounds remaining before we can cut to that top 8. Lots of Pokemon trading card game action still to come. Remember that top 8 will be streamed on this stream, as well as the top 4. Then we'll be cutting to the finalists, and they'll be playing on Championship Sunday. All of that still to come. Stay tuned, guys, as there is tons of Pokemon action remaining in the day.
both of them are, neither of them are taking a loss here. We're just going 2-0-1. Still a lot of Pokemon left to play. 7 rounds today, and today is the big day, right? We talked about this earlier. Getting invited to the World Championship, a big deal. It's a great accomplishment, but I think a lot of players see day one as kind of like, okay, this is the first hurdle. I need to get through this to get to day 2, because day 2 is when you start, you're playing against all the best players in the world. You start making the elimination round. You start winning, those your share of that $500,000 in prizes, and eventually be crowned world champion. And both of these players are still in a very good position to do so.
Yeah, essentially, you have to come into this tournament with a mindset of you have to set tiny goals for yourself. You can come in and be like, I'm going to be world champion, but then if you don't make that, you kind of fall short. But we'll have to see. They're going to try to get there.
Yeah, both of these players, as well as the other 120-ish players in the room, are trying to become world champion. That was round 3. There's still a lot of Pokemon left to be played. We are going to take a quick break before returning to the World Championship. Do not go anywhere.
Hello everyone, I'm Kyle Pukasukovic, and today I'm here with a quick Pokemon TCG training session to help you get good.
Well, let's run through some of the best trainer cards you'll see in nearly every deck. Cynthia lets you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 6 cards. Lily, you can play it on the first turn to fill your hand up to 8 cards. Cherish Ball, grab a Pokemon GX from your deck and put it into your hand. Pokemon Communication, trade a Pokemon from your hand with one from your deck. And Reset Stamp, mess with your opponent's hand, sometimes forcing them down to just a single card.
Thanks for watching this quick video. Hopefully you learned something today, and be sure to keep watching for more tips on how to get good.
open. Hello, Pokemon fans, and welcome back to the 2019 Pokemon Trading Card Game World Championship. My name is Kenny Wisdom. I'm joined, as always, by the one, the only former World's Top 8 competitor, Jeremy Jalen.
That's right.
And if you were over on the other stream, the main stream where we just were, you saw a pretty exciting big Fire-type GX Max match finish up. Round 3 is not quite concluded yet, so we have a little bit of time, and I thought we could go over some of the things that have been happening at this World Championship and some of the players that are competing today.
Yeah, well, of course, one of the very first decks that we should talk about is that Reshiram and Charizard GX deck. Just a ton of fire support for the players out there now, and it's really been one of the big impressive decks this weekend.
Yeah, we just saw John Ang take a intentional draw with this deck. It was one of the most popular going into day 1. Not sure about the day 2 metagame breakdown quite yet, but it's got to be the top 3 or 4 most popular decks. It just is very powerful and very consistent.
Yeah, and again, 2 versions of it that people have been playing. Of course, one of the versions with Green's Exploration, being able to search your deck for any 2 trainer cards if you have no ability Pokemon in play. Meanwhile, the other deck plays a ton of ability Pokemon, Jirachis, Denenes, all that stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, I can't really decide which deck I like better, because I think in theory I like the Green's Exploration deck better, because I see, you can do the prize trade-offs with the Volcanions, and Green's is a really powerful, my favorite card in all of Pokemon is Twins, and Green's is basically that, right? But then whenever I see the abilities version in action, I just see wow, this deck is just so much better.
This deck's insane.
They're just Jiraching for millions of cards every turn, so I can't really decide. And clearly the player base as a whole amongst the top players here in day 2 can't really decide either.
Yeah, we've seen Tord play the ability version. We've seen players like John Ang play this Greens version. And like you said, it's decisive to say, really, which one's better. I'm sure at the end of this tournament, we'll figure out which one's actually better.
Well, and that's the thing about the card games, right, is that it's very possible there's not actually a better one. There was a better version for this tournament. It remains to be seen which exactly that was. There's certainly a better version for any given tournament, for any given metagame, but it's not as if, if all the Reshiram players got to know what everyone else was playing, they just got their deck list early, then they could all decide on one version to play. But it wasn't the case, and you just have to kind of take the risks, and it's not just clear as which one's better, which one's worse. It depends on a lot of different factors that are constantly changing, which is one of the beautiful things about the Pokemon trading card game.
Yeah, and then, of course, another deck that abuses that Welder supporter is the Blacephalon and Naganadel deck, where it really just can get knockouts out of nowhere.
Yeah, we saw this deck, the exact sort of deck, on camera multiple times yesterday, and again, all we kept saying was, oh, well, man, the Blacephalon player's in a really tough spot here. They only have 1 energy on board. Oh, what's that, Welder? Oh, is that a Naganadel? Is that a B-string? Is that a B-string? Yeah, that's a knockout. Oh, and they have a knockout for next turn, too, because they have 8 energy on the board. This deck is very explosive, one of the only decks that can consistently threaten early, clean one-hit knockouts on those big tag teams. I think maybe a little bit of a sleeper going into this tournament. Wasn't one of the, I think everyone was focused on Reshiram, the big tag team, Pikachu and Zekrom, Malamar, but Blacephalon was a popular choice, and it's paying off here as we see many successful players in day 2 with it.
Yeah, and then, of course, Welder does not stop there. There is another deck that it is a massive engine for, and that is the Mewtwo and Mew GX Toolbox deck. That deck being able to just use that perfection ability to copy any Pokemon GX or EX attack on your bench or in your discard pile. And with Welder, you're able to charge up in 1 turn and then just clean sweep and choice of different attacks.
Yeah, and it really shows you too, throughout the history of the Pokemon TCG, we've had these sets, we've had these times in the standard format's history where we really push a certain type, right? We've had things like Dark Patch, if you want to go way back to 2012. We've had things like all the fighting support from a few years ago, right? And now we have
Strong Energy,
Fighting Stadium. Now we have this Welder and the Fire Crystal package, but it shows that it's not just on fire Pokemon. It just makes Fire Energy that much better. When you have a card like Mewtwo and Mew that can really use any type of energy, and you just have this kind of built-in engine there that you wouldn't really expect, but just shows you how strong those cards can be.
Yeah, Welder has really just been putting in a lot of work this weekend, and really since it came out. It's just anytime you see a card that says you get a cheat energy into play, it's really good. But then if you add draw power on top of that, it's busted.
Yeah, the story I've been telling all weekend is that Sam Chen, one of the top players in the world, did not make top 16 in North America this year, but has in the past. Just an amazing player. weldered, attached 2 energies, and then just forgot to draw the cards. And that just shows you, like, oh, you know, I just think this effect is powerful enough that I'm not questioning why I didn't draw 3 cards off the supporter. So when you add that card advantage on top of it, it just makes the card absurd, absolutely bonkers. And I suspect we're going to see it as in the forefront of the format for the entire time that's legal.
Yeah, moving off of these fire decks and these welder decks, one of the decks that really didn't lose much to rotation for this World's Championship tournament is that Pikachu and Zekrom GX, being able to just use all of the lightning support to really push just like undoubtable pressure on your opponent.
Yeah, not only did it lose much, but it actually gained quite a bit in, Raichu and Alolan Raichu GX. This deck, I think, was the clear example of, okay, let's just take the decks from the North American International Championships, and then let's remove as many cards. Oh, Pikachu and Zekrom just lost nothing. It just gets these other good support cards. It's just already was an incredibly powerful deck. Emery, of course, taking it to second place there, could not beat Stefan, could not, get in the way of the repeat at the North American International Championship. This deck was the most popular or second most popular, depending on how you want to break things down, for day 1 players. Not sure how it looks in day 2, but I gotta imagine at least one copy is going to top 8 this tournament.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's just because it can get to that spot anywhere. You have both of those, probably the best Prism Star cards you could ask for this deck in Tapu Koko Prism and Thunder Mountain Prism, really just helping you get quite often a turn 1 full blitz.
Right, and that's just a ridiculous thing to say when you have the turn 1 full blitz. You see the Prism cards on your screen now. These very powerful one-time use cards. But going back to the Pikachu and Zekrom deck, it's just, you might start playing Pokemon, you get up the rule book, you pick up a theme deck, and you look through the rules and you say, okay, I can attach 1 energy per turn. So it immediately becomes obvious to you, or at least it should once you start playing competitively, that cheating on that, quote-unquote, being able to attach multiple energy a turn, or even in the case of Thunder Mountain, reducing the energy cost from attacks, is just so big. And when we're talking, if you show a player, if you show a new player, player maybe hasn't played in tournaments, a Pikachu and Zekrom GX, and say, hey, this deck can get turn 1 full blitz. I know it costs 3 energy, but it can do that, 50% of the time. They're just going to lose their minds, right? All the Tapu Koko, Prism Star, the Thunder Mountain, just all of these cards work in combination with each other to make what I think was the best deck in the format going into this tournament.
Yeah, well, one thing that might have say against that is probably, or I guess was the most popular and most represented card in day 1. There was 3 different versions of the deck, though, and that is Malamar. Malamar being the card that probably kind of lost the most, but also didn't lose the most. Like, losing Nest Ball is huge.
Yes.
But being able to play your Malamar deck and then get set up, that's the whole goal. Just the problem is trying to do that.
Yeah, we saw Malamar was actually the most popular deck for day 1 competitors when you factor in all the different versions. When you have something like Malamar, Psychic Recharge ability, just kind of, there's a lot of ways you can go with that as long as you have Pokemon that can attack for Psychic Energy. We did lose the Nest Ball, and I think losing the Nest Ball is just putting a spotlight on the deck's glaring problem, which is consistency. I haven't looked over the full results from day 1, but I do have a list of what all the players in advance on most of their decks, and even though it was the most popular deck, I don't think an equivalent number of Malamar made it through, because I think it's just not really a top choice here. We're seeing some truly great players play it. We saw Chikuya Yoneda piloting it. I know a lot of players have just loved this deck, but I really just I think it struggles versus a lot of these decks. I think it has consistency issues, and I think when you have an 8-round tournament, a 7-round tournament, it's going to show up.
Yeah, and it's going to be the big bad of the format, too, because a lot of these tag team decks really don't deal well with single prize decks. And so if Malamar does get set up, they can use that Giratina with Distortion Door to just keep bringing it back. You knock out this Giratina, it's coming right back next turn no matter what. You're going to have to be scared of this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So it does have, the Malamar deck does have some, it has some loyal fans. It has 1 tournament. It is a playable deck, but I just can't get over the inconsistency issues, unfortunately. And it looks, these are some of the decks from day 1 and day 2, and it looks like we actually have standings after the 3rd round. The 3rd round has completed. 4th round is not quite up yet, but we can look at some of the top players from the day and see what they're up to.
Yeah, my apologies. The standings are not up yet, but we did see Zach and John take a tie for the main stage last round. Unfortunate for them, because remember, this tournament, there's not that many rounds as you would see in like a regionals or one of the big IC events.
Right.
It is going to be 7, I think maybe 8 rounds. But to make top 8, you don't have much wiggle room. You're going to be, all right, if I lose one, that means, oh man, if I lose another, I can't make top 8.
Right. You have
even if you tie.
You have no wiggle room at all. You're playing against the best players in the world. And the other thing too is that, Worlds has a lot of great prizes. It is the most prestigious tournament to play in. It is the highest stakes tournament. They're giving out money and as we saw on the slide, money, booster packs, the trophy, whatever. But when you're coming to Worlds, especially if you're in day 2, you really want to make top 8. So if you go, okay, well, I went to Worlds and I went 5-3, I got 18th. That's obviously a great performance. There's thousands of other Pokemon TCG players that would not be able to do as well as you and did not accomplish what you did. And that's not to take away from these accomplishments at all, but nobody wants that. Nobody goes to Worlds and says, I can't wait to get 15th place. They say, no, I want to win. I want to be world champion. I want to make the elimination round. I want to go home with a trophy. I want to go home with a trainer card. I want to go home with the title of world champion.
Yeah, when I was saying before, you kind of got to get small goals set for yourself. So if you're in day 1 of the tournament, your goal, make day 2. If you're in day 2 of the tournament, your goal, make top 8. And then from then on, you go to the World Championships finals, and who knows?
Right, and let's take a look at some of the players who are still in the tournament, trying to make the World Championship finals. We have Zachary Kreckler, our 3-0 first seed right now. He was playing that Dark Box deck. We saw him take a loss on stream yesterday, but he's actually come back now and won 3 straight matches.
Yeah, being able to make it through day 1 with a 6-2 record, playing it down to the wire until that last round. And now starting out 3-0 with that same Dark Box deck he was doing before. Really great stuff to see here. And then, of course, you have Azul Garcia Grigo, 2-0-1, did intentional draw with housemate Michael Pramois playing the exact same 60 cards. So we'll see if he'll be able to pull something together for the next coming rounds. Remember, if he takes a loss, it could put him out of top 8 contention.
Right, and we do see, of course, in 11th right now, Tord Rekliv, perhaps the greatest Pokemon player of all time, at least the greatest Pokemon player of this era, 2-0-1. So undefeated still. Would have liked to have turned that 1 into a win, I would guess, but still very, very live. But one top player who has had an amazing performance all year, top 16 in North America, who is absent from this list, and I believe will be absent from the rest of the tournament, is Jimmy Pendarvis. He is 0-2.
Ooh, no.
We saw Jimmy on stream round 1 of the 4 regional championship wins this year, 5-time regional championship, I believe, in general. We saw him play against current world, defending world champion Robin Schultz. He took a tough loss with that Oranguru Pidgeot control deck, and it looks like he lost the second round as well. So I don't actually know how it shakes out. I don't know if you need to be X1-1, maybe an X2 will get into the top 8, but certainly starting 0 and 2 is never where you want to be, and probably eliminates him from the tournament.
Yeah, that's pretty unfortunate to hear, but a lot of his friends are playing that exact same deck. Michael Pramois, Azul, how we mentioned earlier. So the deck is doing well. It is performing, and it's one of the most unique decks we've seen here this weekend.
Yeah, I think ever since kind of this whole, Oranguru, we have some Lucamine action. In the past, we've used Zoroark, maybe.
I blame Pedro for everything involving, Oranguru and, Shedinja drawing a bunch of cards.
Right. It's the past couple of years, sometimes we've had, stall decks or control decks in the past, but I feel like the past couple of seasons have really, Pokemon players have just realized, oh, I don't actually need to just attack and take prizes to win. I have something else going on. And I think, I walked into the building today, basically. I didn't have to get up as early as you guys, thankfully. And I just looked over and I said, oh, Jimmy broke it with another big control deck. Who would have thought, right? It's just what these players have been doing, what a lot of the top players have been relying on for years. And they're saying, oh, Zoroark being able to draw through your entire deck in a turn was great, but I don't actually need that anymore.
No, yeah, you can just settle with Pidgeotto being able to airmail each turn for 1 card extra.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, it's not exactly a trade, but it
invites technically.
Right. I mean, think about, a lot of players. There are, I don't know how many, dozens, if not hundreds of players who started this season wanting to qualify for the World Championship and just couldn't get enough points.
Yeah.
And so they were like, oh, I just couldn't get that 550. I stalled at 500, stalled at 400. And then the top players in the world are saying, oh, yeah, I got my invite in November. And I've just been getting free plane tickets ever since then.
Yeah, it's insane to think about, but that's why you can't count anyone out here in this tournament. Every time you sit down and an opponent, they are one of the best players from their region, and you have to play to your best to take that win.
And speaking of a couple of the best players from their region, we do have the match that we're going to feature this round just about ready. We've been talking about them all around. Azul Garcia Grijo versus Bert Walters.
Yeah, Azul GG, as he likes to be called, just putting on consistent performances after consistent performances. Second at the Latin America International Championships, I believe, last season. And then has just been dominating this season. I believe he has a regionals win.
Last season he had 3 regionals wins, I remember, and then it was immediately shown up by Jimmy Pendarvis. But nothing to scoff at. Bert, top 32 rather in Europe. So
22.
Top 22 rather. Didn't have to play day 1 at all. Both of these players, this is the matchup again that you could see in the finals of Worlds or in the finals of an international, and just not even bat an eye at it, right? These are just 2 of the top players in the world.
Yeah, and we've been talking about Jimmy Pendarvis losing that round 1 to Robin and being 0-2, at least possibly out of the tournament. We have the exact same matchup here for you folks. It is that Oranguru Pidgeotto control deck versus the Mewtwo Mew GX toolbox. So we'll see if both of these players have taken some advice from the players in round 1 about this matchup to see what they can bring to it.
Well, we were talking about that backstage a little bit while the Jimmy-Robin match was happening, which is, wow, what a bad beat for Jimmy, right? And a bad beat for all of this this team on this deck. When you're saying, okay, I had a new innovative deck for Worlds, and a surprise factor is a big part of it. And then, wow, it got featured on stream, and on stream I lost because my opponent figured out how to play against it.
Yeah.
So, wow, and now everyone in the tournament, there's just rumblings. Oh, did you see what Jimmy was playing? Did you see what, Azul was playing? And it's going to be really, really difficult now for Azul to, there's no more surprise factor. That's been taken out. Let's see if he can just do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, unfortunately for Jimmy there, but Azul is trying to right that wrong and take a victory for this creative deck. And I love watching decks like it too.
Oh, I mean, I love watching both of these style of decks. We have, on one side, we have the control deck, the slow, grindy, trying to win the game through alternate win conditions. And on the right side of your screen, we have that kind of toolbox deck, which is always, personally, something that I really enjoy watching because there's just so many different options. You get to see a bunch of cards you don't get to see in competitive play. You see some really weird lines of play. So this is going to be a really entertaining match.
Yeah, and there is a Cherish Ball to start off the turn for Bert here. And now it really is going to be interesting to see, first of all, if he knows what Azul's playing, because typically you kind of go, all right, who are the best players in the room? What are they playing? Just so I know what I'm up against when I go against them. But in a room like this, that's the whole tournament.
Right, exactly. I think, there's just such a difference in player quality. I think if you attend, local tournaments, league challenges, league cups, maybe even regionals, you might play against someone who's new to the game, or maybe they haven't quite figured everything out, or they're just here for fun. But when you're in the World Championships in general, but especially day 2, that each player is going to be, these are the top 100 and X amount of players in the world. They're not going to make obvious mistakes. They're going to come prepared. And this is truly a clash of the Titans here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for Bert, he will have to throw away a welder because he did not have any fire energy in his hand. But with that Denene change, is able to get a giant earth, and from that, more fire energy into his hand.
2 fire energy now. Had the Denene change all those cards away, as you said. So what is? I know you're pretty familiar with the Mewtwo toolbox deck. Not really this exact version, but what is this deck trying to do in the early turns in a general sense?
So Bert plays, if it's the same as Robin's from before, it plays a lot of Hapu and then Welder, and then just other discard outlets. So the Giant Earth, Denene, GX, and you discard your attackers that you wouldn't really be able to get into play because they're stage 1, stage 2s, and other different GX Pokemon. Charge up your Mewtwo and Mew, and then you just clean sweep from there. You have a bunch of different attacks for different matchups. You have the Latios GX with that Tag Purge, being able to do 120 and prevent tag team Pokemon from dealing damage to it. It's great versus other tag team decks. Here, it's actually all right because it's 3 energy for 120. That knocks out everything in Azul's deck.
And speaking of Azul's deck, this may be the one that players are a little bit more confused by. A lot of these cards we haven't seen in competitive play before, and maybe we haven't seen this style of deck before. So can you tell us a little bit about what Azul is doing differently compared to the rest of the field or compared to a normal Pokemon deck?
Well, hey, Pidgey is shining yet again, I believe, since the LBS days from before.
That was even before my time.
But so he is looking to get set up with that Professor Elm's lecture. He will be able to search for essentially his whole deck except for a Ringaroo, Articuno GX, and the Giraffe Rig. Other than that, the Pidgey and Pidgeotto have 50 and 60 HP respectively. That is your draw engine for the deck. So even if he's stuck going Professor Elm's Lecture turn 1, Professor Elm's Lecture turn 2, that's an insane hand.
And this actually, the interaction just happened on screen was something really important we saw in the first time we featured this deck with Jimmy and Robin in round 1, is that Crushing Hammer, you want to remove the psychic energy. You don't really care about the fire energy that much. They can accelerate all that. So it really, I think a lot of the plays in that first round, what came down to can Azul get heads on Crushing Hammer?
Yeah, and there we see Azul discarding that Articuno GX from the Giant Earth. Won't be able to get anything from it, not playing any fire energy, but really just getting his hand down so he can draw an extra card or two with that custom catcher in his hand, because his hand, not really good outside of that. Does have a Pidgeotto for next turn, though.
So what does the Articuno do for this deck? Because we've been talking about how this deck doesn't play on the same axis. It's not really about attacking. It's just about removing resources. How does the Articuno fit into that?
Yeah, so the Articuno GX is really, it can attack. They do play a bunch of water, like I think 2 water energy for sure. But it's really in there for that Cold Crush GX, being able for 1 energy, being able to discard all energies from both active Pokemon. So in Bert's type of strategy where he's just going to load up this 1 Mewtwo and then use a bunch of different attacks from it, it could spell disaster. But with the discard there, Bert knows it could be coming and could be a possibility.
And again, there's not going to be much of a surprise factor here. I think is something that Azul may have been relying on because of that round 1 feature match. So Bert's going to know exactly what he needs to do, exactly how to play this game.
And that is cute from Bert. He has the energy or cycle system to pick up the psychic energy from his discard. Now he's able to attach it again, and Crushing Hammer was for naught. He now just needs a way to retreat from the active spot, and he'll be able to start attacking and putting pressure on this game. Otherwise, Azul will have a few more turns to try to build his setup.
Again, it is very possible that even though this deck is Pokegear, finds a welder.
And again, this is the turn that Bert really needs. Like, he just needs to be able to attack and put on some pressure. And so far, I don't see a way for him to do that. Has he played a supporter? I don't think so.